When I was taking my pilot's license test, I was required to give the FAA an incorrect explanation of how airplanes fly. I had recently graduated engineering school and I knew it was wrong, but I regurgitated it anyway because I knew it was considered the right answer by the FAA. And I suppose that my desire to earn my wings outweighed my desire to educate some grumpy, curmudgeon-y DPE on modern physics. So here I am, 5 years later, trying to correct my mistakes I have yeeted into the universe by asking the question, airplanes, how do they really fly? But before we get into airplanes specifically, let's take a step back to consider a more general concept. What actually defines flight, and what are the different ways of achieving it? In short, flight is basically just when lift overcomes gravity. And also in the case of airplanes, when thrust overcomes drag if you're trying to go anywhere other than straight up, but that's for another day. It seems really simple when you break it down like that, but in practice, generating lift can be quite tricky. And it turns out that there are lots of different ways to generate lift, if you get creative about it. And humanity over the years has come up with some wacky shit. And in nature, we also see lots of creative approaches. There's the classic bird design, flap up, flap down, get all of your lift on the downstroke. Pretty nice, no notes. But then there's also the overachieving little hummingbirds modified design where they flap really in this fast figure 8 motion and it generates lift on both the downstroke and the upstroke, which is what allows them to hover and fly backwards. And mosquitoes have their own figure 8 movements, plus this dynamic angle shifting of their wing edges thing to create and catch the wave of their own little wingtip vortices. Butterflies have soft velvety wings that generate lift on the downstroke, but also clap together at the top of each upstroke in such a way that creates a little pocket of air pressure which pushes out behind them and propels them forward. This design makes them arguably the most efficient flyers in the animal kingdom, though that's a really controversial title to give out because it gets complicated depending on what you count towards an overall efficiency score. Condors gliding for 100 miles without even flapping their wings makes them a top contender, but efficiency also needs to account for how easily and quickly you can take off, land, change direction, etc. So really, it's all up in the air. And then you've got the edge cases, like the flying fish, who are more gliders than flyers, but also, in a very meaningful way, all fish are, in a sense, flying. See, the thing is, when doing any sort of serious aeronautical engineering or thinking about the fundamentals of flight science, it's really important to remember that air is in fact a fluid. Mathematically speaking, the flow of air, for instance, around the wings of an airplane, is governed by the same equations which govern the flow of water. It's all just fluid dynamics. So fish swimming around in water are basically doing the same thing that blimps, dirigibles, etc. are doing in air. It turns out that just being on average less dense than the substance you are trying to fly through is a really great way to get on the right side of the gravity versus lift inequality. Also, should I do like a whole separate video about blimps and dirigibles and submarines and stuff because they're really fun? Anyway, let me know down in the comments. Okay, but y'all are here because you want to know how airplanes specifically fly. Good choice, because airplanes are the best of the flying machines. To which I have this alarmingly academic answer: magic. I'm kidding, but it turns out that there is much less consensus than you might expect about this, given that it's a seemingly foundational concept in our modern jet-setting society. We all know about the 4 forces of flight. Oops, I meant this one. And since it's pretty clear that the forward thrust comes from the engines, turbines, propellers, whatever, all of the disagreement can be pretty much boiled down to the question, where the f does lift actually come from? The classic explanation, the one that I had to give when I was testing for my pilot's license, is the Bernoulli principle. Basically, the idea here is that because of the curved shape of the wing, also known as an airfoil, air travels faster over the top of the wing than it does along the bottom of the wing. This difference in speeds also comes with a difference in pressure, specifically a lower pressure above the wing and a higher pressure below it. And the old gospel of airplanes says that it's that pressure difference, the more pressure below the wing than above it, which results in lift. The problem with this explanation is, well, there's a few problems with it. First off, it sort of just accepts the idea that air flows faster over the top of the wing than underneath it. But if you ask why that happens, you get a lot of blank stares. We really don't know. And it's not because of paired particles, which is what I was taught and probably what you were taught back in the day. The crazy idea that air particles bond like lover geese or penguins for life and want to meet up at the other end of the airfoil at the same time to continue their love story. Like, what? Air molecules don't have feelings. That's crazy. Also, if this pressure difference is the real hero and is the result of the shape of the wing, then why can some planes fly inverted? Or why can some planes fly with wings that are flat, or with no difference in the shape on the top or the bottom of the wing? Something something seems fishy about these birds. Hello? Say cheese. Ah! I have never done business with this company before. That's just not how the creepy guy with the camera found it. They have everything. Our names, our phone numbers, our addresses. Oh God, do you think they have our social security numbers? Who are you? I'm with Incogni, and I'm your only hope. Data brokers are selling your personal information to third parties without even telling you, and removing all of that information from all of those different companies would take years. It's simple. We reach out to data brokers on your behalf, request the removal of your information, and deal with their objections. What's the catch? There is no catch, Xyla. Not when you're saving people's info from data breaches across the goddamn world. I don't know, I'm gonna need to think about it a little bit more. Well, think about it a little bit faster. We're offering 60% off with code Foxlin at checkout, only for a limited time. Come on, Xyla, are you gonna take your privacy into your own hands? Go to incogni.com/Foxlin and use code Foxlin to get an exclusive offer of 60% off. That's incogni.com/Foxlin and use code Foxlin, or click the link below to take your personal data off the market. Well, if the vacuum pressure dynamics aren't fully getting the job done in explaining lift, maybe good old particle dynamics will help us out. Remember that part of physics where your teacher would just start talking about like billiard balls and stuff hitting each other for some reason? Yeah? Remember Newton's third law? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So when an airplane is moving forward, the air hitting the bottom part of the wing is being pushed downwards. And so the equal and opposite reaction is that that airplane itself is gonna be pushed upwards. That sounds pretty good. And it is also a more general concept that doesn't have any problem explaining the inverted flight and flat wing examples that confound Bernoulli. All that matters is they have the right angle of attack and swoosh, you're flying. And yet, it doesn't explain the faster over the top thing, or the pressure difference we see above and below the wings, which we do in fact see time and time again in practice and in simulations. So Bernoulli's principle is not entirely off base, but the more complete answer is a complicated mix of all of these different ideas, plus a few more other straggler ideas. And as a YouTuber, I really want to give you a quick, snappy, clickable answer that's like, it's Bernoulli, or it's Newton's third law. But the reality is that the true answer of flight is so incomprehensibly complex that I would be doing you all a disservice by pretending to understand it. And the truth is, anyone who claims to fully understand flight is doing you a disservice. The $1 million bounty for Navier-Stokes is still out there, after all. These days, computationally intense models of fluid dynamics have given us a lot of insight into how and why some of these effects take place and how they interact. And those are good enough to have gotten us to the really efficient airplanes that we have today. But fluid dynamics are famously complex, and just like we don't have a grand unified theory for physics that like ties together the quantum realm and its myriad forces with gravity acting at the macro level, we also don't have a grand unified theory of fluid dynamics which fully ties together the statistical behavior of fluids with the chaotic behavior of individual particles. But it turns out that didn't stop us from figuring out how to build early airplanes over 100 years ago. And that's what I love most about engineering. Sometimes you don't need to fully understand everything. You can just keep trying new things and experimenting until you figure out something that works. But all in all, it seems to be the case that, just like with birds, bees, and apparently squids, the exact details of how any two different airplanes get and stay airborne are a little different in every case. When I first started working on this video, I wanted to talk about so many specifics of airplane design and flight controls and what stalls are in the center of gravity and the whole like big front wing, tiny tail wing thing and how that all works. Like all of the things I wish I had learned in flight school. But I got so caught up in just like, where the heck does lift come from, that I ran out of time. So maybe all that stuff about airplane design and cool piloting stuff can be the next video. So drop any questions that you have about these topics and I'll see how many I can answer when I do get around to making it. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video. Lots more airplane stuff coming soon. Lots more airplane stuff coming soon. Anyway, here is some amazing footage of my favorite airplane in the entire world. Isn't she just the prettiest? And a many thank you to all of the patrons that helped make this video free for all of you. And also, I've just started a new thing on my Patreon where every other week I record a mini podcast that goes live exclusively on Patreon, and it's just like a behind the scenes of everything that I have going on and a really big project that I have in the works right now. So if you're interested in that, my Patreon starts at $5 a month. And thank you so much. I'll see you next time. Bye.